Nothing changes instantaneously. In a gradually heating bathtub, you'd be boiled to death before you knew it. Our Father, who art in heaven. Seriously? What the actual fuck?
Gilead doesn't care about children. Gilead cares about power.
Why does healing have to be the only goal? Why can't we be as furious as we feel?
For whatever man sows, so shall he reap.
Welcome to Above the Garage.
Hi, friends. Welcome to our analysis of Season 4, Episode 8 of The Handmaid's Tale, which is entitled Testimony. Let's do our round of introductions and dive in.
Hi, I'm Ginger.
Hi, I'm Melissa.
Hi, I'm Claudia.
Hi, I'm Scarlett.
Hi, I'm Marigold.
Hi, I'm Violet.
And I'm Kate. So the episode opens with Glory Box by Portishead as June cuts her hair. Obviously, relevant lyrics. I'm so tired of playing with this cloak and dagger. Give my heart away. Give it to the other girls to play, for I've been temptress for too long. Give me a reason to love you. Give me a reason to be a woman. I just want to be a woman. And as they're singing that, she cuts her hair, but she's also like touching herself with her hands, like Nick touched her on the bridge, on the back of the neck and sliding down her shoulder.
Her cutting her hair is a parallel to her cutting her hair in 201 when Nick gives her the scissors when she's trying to escape. So I thought that was really, I guess I didn't really pay attention to that before, but I love that she's cutting her hair the length she did when he was with her, but she's also like touching herself in the way that he did. So obviously he's on her mind.
Yeah.
Wasn't there recently a Samson and Delilah reference too?
I know like in the Bible, usually the women's glory comes from their hair. So it could be symbolic.
It is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their femininity and their sensuality also comes from their hair, I think, in some cultures. So
I love that she looked so peaceful. I mean, she rarely looks peaceful since she ended up in Canada. And so I really love that she had a moment of being with herself and thinking about the things she wanted to think of and not being confronted with anything she tries to avoid. So
I feel like she's also like very like sensual almost.
Yeah.
Versus
Totally.
how she has been.
Yeah. I also viewed it as like autonomy over her own body. She
Yes.
never had that in Gilead, and now she finally can do something. So this is just a small act of reclaiming her independence.
Yeah.
yeah. In Gilead, she couldn't cut her hair though. I think they're not supposed to cut their hair, and that's why. And like Ginger said, that first time, she had to cut her hair because they were trying to make her not look like herself. And this time she made the choice to cut her own hair.
But also she was cutting her hair back then because she was going to escape to be free. And now she is free. So it almost feels like she's cutting off Gilead to feel more free in Canada, since she doesn't really feel that way.
Yes, she didn't do it in a hurry, like in episode 1 of season 2. She did it when she wanted to do it. Like she was okay with herself in freedom, and she did it. Not because someone or because something happened and she needed to cut the hair.
Mm-hmm. I wondered later on in the episodes, not wondered, she looks like she really does it well, because I'm like, if I would do that, I would look horrible afterwards, cutting my hair by myself. And I don't think she went to the hairdresser. I know it's like the hairdresser of the show makes her hair and everything, but it's like she's cutting her hair on her own, and then she looks perfect.
She's had practice.
I have cut my own hair. It didn't look like that. You're right.
No.
Then we're at a library in the dark, and the women are all in a circle. So it's some sort of support group. And one of the women, Tyler, is talking about cutting. So it's interesting to move from cutting hair into talking about her cutting her skin, obviously, as a defense mechanism. She used a method of control in Gilead. And like a lot of people, she cut in places that wouldn't be noticed. Moira tells her, you're here now, you're healing, you're free. And Tyler says, yeah, my commander's free too. And Jesus, I wonder how often that happened, or how that happened, that the commander would come to Canada and be free. But obviously she's not feeling free at all because of that. And the women start talking to June about facing Fred in court tomorrow. And notably, everybody is talking about how June feels, except June. And finally, after everybody else has stated how she must feel, and Moira's made it clear that she doesn't want her to go to court at all, June speaks up. I'm not nervous or worried or scared. I can't fucking wait.
I like the division of, June's in the middle, Moira's on the side, and Emily's on the other side. And you can see what Moira's mindset is and what Emily's mindset is. And obviously we're going to see that, those mark difference throughout the whole episode. And I think it starts here with those little details that they say, because Emily's like, yeah, she feels that she has to go and do it in person. And Moira's like, well, she doesn't have to do it in person. So it's interesting how you can see all those three things play out.
I love how they're sitting in a circle though too, like they used to as handmaids. And then like the lampshades look like their wings.
Yeah.
Which almost in a way it kind of makes me think of like the handmaids that are not there, as in like the ones who died or the ones who are still stuck in Gilead. So I think another beautiful cinematography moment in this episode.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's very cool. And that was pointed out in the Meta Witches review of this episode on their website. Those give some great analysis too. I also like how Moira knew June pre-Gilead and Emily only knows June during Gilead and post-Gilead. So I like that they have this two different viewpoints of June and what she'd want. And Emily's, even though Moira was June's best friend, Emily's is more on point with what June wants.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just crazy though, like how everybody's telling June how to feel. And even Moira, like when she's talking to Tyler, she's like, well, at least you're here now, you're free. Which is true, but it almost comes across like, I don't want to say condescending, but kind of like, this is how you should feel. Like, oh, at least you're free, like maybe she just wants to be angry and not see the silver lining. But I think that kind of shows the difference between like June just wanting to feel her feelings and Moira just kind of, she's in such a different place in her recovery and her healing, I should say, than other people, so it's just interesting to me, I guess, that Moira is running this group. I'm assuming it must be like informal, because it's not like Moira has training in psychology.
No, yeah, she's currently in coding boot camp, so I don't know how much psychology training.
She did work at the refugee center for a bit, so maybe she did get some training, but she's obviously not like a licensed counselor.
Right, that's what I meant. But yeah, I mean, she's obviously like a survivor herself, so she can relate.
Yeah.
I just realized that basically both of the women of her best friends basically don't really know her at this moment, because even Emily got out before June really went off the rails. So that her most self-destructive time was after Emily left. So I don't know if any of those can really understand where she's at the moment. But yeah, I agree that's cool that they are sitting next to her, like the ones on the shoulder.
Flanking her, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the devil and the angel on the shoulder. Then Moira catches up with her in the stacks after the meeting, and her new security detail asks if she's ready to go, but she wants to talk to Moira or ask her if she wants to kick her out of the group. And I don't think she's done anything worthy of that just yet. But June's disappointed that she's not got more in common with the other women. And she's laughing at the concepts of forgiveness, healing, journaling, which, by the way, it didn't seem like the other women were feeling all that healed or forgiving in the meeting. But anyway, something much more June style is happening around the corner, a confrontation. Someone's chasing Emily, begging her to talk to her for 5 minutes. Emily can't get her to leave her alone, so June interjects and tells her to leave. The woman gives her contact info to Emily on a piece of paper that drops to the floor. And June tries to get Emily to tell her who she was, but Emily leaves shaken. Surprise, surprise, June picks up the paper.
I just thought it was funny how June has like a bodyguard, and then she kind of becomes Emily's bodyguard in a way. Like she's kind of looking out for her. I thought that was kind of funny. But also I think June was very surprised by this meeting and everything, because I think she was shocked that people weren't feeling as angry and like just feeling their feelings like she expected. And like she feels.
And it seems like the whole episode she's trying to get the people to feel like she's feeling, so she isn't alone anymore, because she hoped that she finds some people that think like her, and nobody really dares to go all out like she would. So
yeah, I agree. I think it's hard for survivors of trauma to admit that they're angry, because society always tells them to let go, forgive, move on. So I understand why the other women are holding back their emotions.
And that's kind of how Moira's leading the group. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I know she means well, and she, again, like she's in a more advanced state of healing, but like, I feel like because she's like, well, at least you're here, I think it makes them feel like they can't express their dark thoughts.
Minimizes what they've gone through in a way, I feel like.
And when the thing with Emily happens afterwards, June basically gets her clue to maybe getting Emily there. So she's immediately picking up the signs that maybe she can find an ally in Emily when she pushes her in that direction.
Trauma victims also don't want to be judged by other people. I mean, obviously the support group, these are people that have gone through similar experiences, but like Marigold said, society tells you you're not supposed to feel like that and that you're supposed to be the bigger person, which for me, that is a little condescending. So all those fears, you kind of push them down, but eventually they're just going to boil up. So you have to kind of deal with those feelings like anger and hatred and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure that's also why the victims hold them back, especially with their loved ones, because they're going to be, they're already seen as victims and they don't want to be seen as victims.
Yeah.
When they're in the library and June says, why aren't they more angry? And Moira says, how do you know they're not? That I really connected with that personally, because I feel like I express anger through sadness. And so I just found that really interesting, because it was like, how you don't really know what people are feeling just from the way they're acting. There could be another layer underneath that they don't want to express to you.
And that's kind of a note I had with Emily this entire episode. I cannot figure out how she's feeling until the very end when she says it, right? I'm like, shit, is she upset about the woman killing herself? Is she not upset? Like, it's completely, and she's so good at what she's doing with not showing her emotions. And, she was trained to do that, of course, but that's a very good point. You don't know how anyone's feeling.
And I mean, I definitely it's probably rare that somebody would actually think I was mad because I usually just get like sad, but then I'll know that I'm kind of mad and, but it's not like I'm expressing it because it feels like it's at the core. It's like down in there somewhere. It's not like right on the edge where I can show it. So I just thought that was important, because obviously we relate to June most because we see everything she's gone through and we see her journey. But it's just interesting how they showed that different ways people express their emotions is all.
I'm the same way, Violet. And I think that part of it is too that women were not supposed to show anger. So that's
because we're called bitches when we're angry.
Yeah.
Right. Or emotional if we're sad, blah, blah, blah. We're probably all trying to keep our emotions under cover to some extent. Men are forced to not be emotional too. So it's all dumb. Then we're at dinner with Emily, Moira, June, and Luke, and their kitchen is so dark. I mean, the whole show is insanely dark, but the past couple scenes have been strikingly so. And Moira is saying coding boot camp has been kicking her ass. I didn't remember that she worked in computers. Oh, I did. She was designing a website for something progressive back when Holly was talking, the mom. Okay. But so much would change in 7 years in that world. It would be tough.
Yeah.
And Luke asked if Emily is going back to teaching, and she says Syl's encouraging her, but she doesn't know if she's ready. And June interrupts and asks who Iris Baker is. When everybody's silent, she slides the paper from the library at Emily, and Emily uncomfortably admits she knew her as Aunt Irene. She was assigned to the district where she had her first posting before she met June. June asks what she wants and follows up with, she hurt you, didn't she? And this time Luke interjects angrily to June, why would you say that? And June responds with, because she's an aunt. She tells Emily she should face her and get everything she's been holding out. And Luke keeps interjecting June. But Emily responds to June, we're not all like you.
But it's kind of, Luke's reaction now is kind of proving what Scarlett was saying about victims, where June is, speaking about how she thinks Emily feels. And she does know Emily. She knows what she's capable of. She's seen her in action in Gilead. So it's just kind of showing like June, the way Luke is approaching it is kind of like, it feels judgmental, I guess, or it almost feels like he's reprimanding her. And so she feels like she can't express her feelings, But again, here we had the women in the support group kind of speaking for June about how she feels about Fred. But then June here is kind of speaking for Emily. But I do feel like this is different because I think she sees in Emily that, well, again, she knows who she is. She knows how vengeful she can be. So I think she's kind of trying to like pull that out of her.
Yeah, I think June is really interested in what happened to Emily. And also Luke has no idea about the ants. So he's not like he met many ants in Canada, right? But I think June generally wants to help Emily about what happened with this aunt.
Because she also saw firsthand the consequence of what happened because of that aunt. So she knows Emily has feelings about this that she's not releasing.
Then June and Luke are washing dishes, and it seems Luke's trying to sympathize that Aunt Irene must have been brutal. And June says, how bad could she be? Aunt Lydia set a high fucking bar. And then Luke gets to what he was really wanting to say, which is, if she had wanted you to know, don't you think she would have just told you? Which makes everything that follows extra hard for me to understand, because he understands the concept of refugees needing time to tell you what happened to them, but not when it comes to himself and June, it seems, which I get. I literally this morning told Kai, I did something, and Kai was like, Mom, you say never to do that. I was like, well, do as I say, not as I do. So I get it. It's harder when it applies to yourself.
I do want to defend Luke in this scene, though, when he tells June that he told Tuello about Hannah in the summer home, because if I were in Luke's shoes, I would have told Tuello as well, because in his mind, he's doing anything he can to get Hannah, and it would be a logical thing to give every piece of information that you know to this intelligence agent. So
I agree. And they've had nothing, basically. They've had no information. It's just been a hole for years.
He should have asked her, though.
He
should have told her before.
Agree, but it was her information. So I feel like they should have at least had a discussion. Like, hey, I think we should go talk to Tuello, or do you want to, should we do it together? Like, it just feels like she was the one who was there. So she should have been involved in the conversation, at least with Luke, or had the option to speak to Tuello with him. So
I though, like, even at this moment in time, I don't understand why that upset her, to be honest.
I think it's because she was already upset, though, because it feels like he's telling her how she should feel.
Right, but I feel like that's not related necessarily. I'm saying, why wouldn't she want Tuello to know that about Hannah? I agree, he should have talked to her, absolutely, 100%.
It's too early, I think. I think she's too, like...
It doesn't make sense to me. It's my daughter, she's in Gilead. I want to tell everybody that can help me too.
It wasn't that she didn't want Tuello to know. It was that she wanted the agency to make the decision to tell him herself.
Okay, that's fair.
I think that's all it was.
And I get that. I don't think Luke understood that, though. I don't think like he would have thought that piece of information is something that she would have not wanted to share, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Luke, again and again, especially in this episode, like, is not relating the fact that she's been living with no rights and no agency. So like every single choice that she's able to make is so important to her at this point. Like, oh, I can eat whatever I want. That's like a huge deal. So I think that to her, it's like somebody relaying information that she didn't like want them to say, or she wanted to be able to say herself. It does feel like a pretty big violation when she just left a place where she couldn't say anything without, I have a small Luke defense just because I didn't remember the way June phrases the thing about the coming to the testimony.
Yeah, but after that, he asks June if she's sure she doesn't want him at the testimony. And she says, no, it would just hurt you to hear those things about me. So I don't want that. And he seems to accept her answer and then tells her, oh yeah, we talked about the Hannah part already. But what you were about to say, I agree with Violet. He has a defense here, right? She phrased it as she didn't want him hurt. I don't think that's what she meant. I think she didn't want him there for her own comfort, but she phrased it wrong. And that gave him a reason.
She's trying to be nice, I think.
Yeah, she was, but that gave him an excuse.
Well, and everything that June does in relation to Luke relation to a lot of people is like guilt driven. Yeah. So like the way that she says that it's like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to like have any more like guilt about like what is happening to you in this situation. But the phrasing of that, like you just said, probably makes Luke feel like, I mean, I think that he should have seen through that. I think he should have known that that wasn't what she meant. But I think he's able to be like,
well, you said,
oh, she doesn't want to hurt me, but I'm strong enough. I can do it. I want to hear it, and I know I'll be fine. But it's like,
it reminds me of the tape she sent him too, though, because I had some problems with that wording too, because she's like, you could move on if you have to, or something to that effect. And she said like Holly was made out of love. You can move on if you
Mhm.
have to. She's not being straight with him. She's not saying, I'm in love with Nick. You should move on. She's
But
hedging everything. And I think it's probably to not hurt him, but it's the way she talks to him. And it does not clearly give him the direction and the certainty that he needs.
I think there is clearly a communication problem between them, and June is cautious when it comes to saying things, in part because of everything she has experienced in Gilead. She mistrusts people, I guess. And I think Luke misses his old June a lot when the communication was more fluid between them. So I can understand why Luke's want to go to June's testimony, because I think he lacks empathy about what June suffered in Gilead, because he doesn't know anything about it, He wasn't there.
Yeah. I think Luke should have, the mistake was that he even went there. Like, he should have talked to her. If he had any doubt about it, he should have talked to her.
Yeah.
Well, and even Moira, he did talk to Moira,
Yeah.
and she seconded that. She said if she
Yeah.
wanted us there, she would have told us.
Right. Exactly.
June didn't even want Moira to go, because Moira says,
Yeah.
if she would have wanted a cheering section, we would go, or we would be there. But I also think that before Gilead, I don't think June would have not told them to go. I think before Gilead, like she said, we don't fight. I don't think she would have voiced her desires or what she wanted, even though maybe she wasn't clear enough for whatever reason. She still is a little bit more vocal. And I don't think Luke is used to that, because that's not who June was before. And I've said it before, like, we know Luke, what he wants is just for her to be who she was, because it's what he needs to heal. And it's just subconscious. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not stupid. He knows that she's not going to go back, but he's desperate to just find that connection that was there before, so that he can feel that he got her back. So in a way, it's a little selfish on his part, but he's not doing it to hurt her. It's just what he needs, because he's desperate. Like, you're here, you're finally here. I waited all this time, and it's just not going, obviously it's not going to go good, but it's going, I guess, worse than he's probably thinking about Emily in the past episode.
Yeah.
That Emily didn't want to see his wife. So what if he's also thinking, what if we ever get Hannah? What if I can't connect with Hannah? Like, I'm pretty sure all of these things have to be going through his mind. It's really, like, the second time that I watched it, I try to see it from another perspective.
Well, and what Melissa was saying too, like, I agree about the connection, like them having that lost connection. And I think, like, for June, it's that I don't know that it's just because she doesn't want to hurt Luke. I think she's really struggling to communicate with him just generally, like having trouble expressing anything to him.
Yeah. And in the first watch, I believed her when she said she doesn't want him there because it's hurting him. But the more I watched that, the more clear it became to me that she's noticing that he's always breaking down, and she has to comfort him, and she can't start to heal if she's having to hold his hand to help him heal first, even though she just came back and she's still really deep in her trauma, understandably. And she's basically doing this for herself and not for him, but she can't tell him that because he would be devastated again. So yeah,
I agree that I think, like, when somebody's gone through trauma too, you feel guilty for bringing other people along with you on your trauma. Like, it's traumatizing to tell it again to a new person, and it's even more traumatizing when you are unprepared to have to tell it to somebody too. So, like, with June and Luke just appearing in the courtroom, like, that's traumatizing for her. I know Luke didn't have any ill intent by going. I know that he was just desperate to, connect with her, to know what happened to her so he can help her heal. But at the same time, like Melissa said, like, he lacks empathy. He doesn't see it from her perspective.
I also think it's hard knowing, like, you have to go testify against somebody who kept you as a sex slave and raped you for years, and you were impregnated by another man who Luke knows she was in love with. So, like, to say that out loud and to confront a room full of people with your abusers right there is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And then to have to do that in front of your husband who doesn't know these things, like I think it's also hard for her to say, Luke, I don't want you there because I don't want to talk about my rapes in front of you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I think that she is not able to express well what she needs either, because it's hard for her to even say it to him.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about it, but Moira comes in and she senses the tension and she's trying to talk Luke down. And, you know, he's able to tell her how he really feels. And he says he doesn't know what she wants. She's like a stranger half the time. He says they talk about Hannah, like that's like the only good thing. And then he says in bed and he just breaks down. And the last time we saw them was, you know, the controversial situation. Moira tells him getting over trauma is just a bumpy fucking road. They need to be patient until June gets where she's going because he doesn't know what she's been through. So that sentence also, you know, he says that maybe that's the problem and foreshadows what happens tomorrow.
I was thinking that June on the staircase in Luke and Moira's house was so similar to her being in the Waterford house when she would like wait on the stairs and
I forgot to say that, so I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah, that she was listening to that whole Moira and Luke exchange.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point.
Then very pregnant Serena is reading a testimony in her room. Mr. Waterford's sexual tastes were very pedestrian. On occasion, he couldn't even perform. When that happened, he'd make me have sex with another Jezebel while he watched and masturbated. And I do enjoy Fred's response, only because this is a show and not real life. And a good evening to you too, Fred responds. And Serena then reveals that it was Moira Strand's testimony. Super sad, but I'm glad that Moira got it out there. And Fred calls her a deviant and a liar. And Serena's pretty distanced from like caring about his actual sexual misbehavior at this point. We've come a pretty far away from season 1 where she, you know, told June that he was her husband till death do us part. But she's focused on business. It didn't help that you're rolling your eyes the whole time and that you call June Offred. Calling her June will help. And Fred says, well, coming to court with me will help. And she said she hasn't been feeling well, but he knows how to get her to come. He says, you want June to think you're afraid to face her. And also it's been raining all episode, I believe. That's just something I noticed afterwards.
Yeah. The way he says June after she tells him to not say Offred, it's just like so mocking. I could strangle him. It's like such an ass.
Then we're at the Red Center. The handmaids are scrubbing the floors and the windows, and Lydia walks in. And I don't know, I just kind of looked at her and could tell she was unstable, not in a good state. And she starts yelling at everybody, have you never washed a floor? Put something into it. It's deplorable. And Aunt Elizabeth and Aunt Ruth are laughing with each other like pretty hard. I don't know that I've seen aunts ever laugh this hard. So Lydia zeroes in on them and walks over. Gossip is a tool of the devil, ladies. And the one says, still like basically laughing, we were just saying what a blessing it is to have you back, Aunt Lydia. And Lydia sarcastically says, how kind, but we must set a good example. And she starts tasing the shit out of the handmaid scrubbing the floor, and because she missed a spot. And then when Aunt Ruth tries to stop her, she teases her too. So that was a step too far.
I think Lydia tases the handmaid because she just, at first she said to her she missed a spot, like more normally. And then she sees the look in Ruth's eyes, and she realizes that they think that she has turned too soft now. And then she goes apeshit on the handmaid because she wants to show that she's still ruthless.
That's a good word. Yeah, I actually thought it was more her humiliation than rage thing because the aunts were laughing at her. I really think that the handmaid was actually like totally like innocent in this, even to Lydia. I
totally
think she was just
innocent.
pissed. Yeah,
but I think she thinks that they think she has lost her way, and that's why they are laughing at her, that she's literally laughable right now and they are the better aunts.
But they also don't have 7 handmaids who escaped, and like that's all true. Of Lydia's handmaids basically are trouble and have gotten away from her. So even though like we think she's the toughest, clearly she's been outsmarted, so she's embarrassed.
I think it's also the power dynamic. She just wants to stay relevant and stay in power. But these new handmaids are like this sounds horrible, but it's like a new crop of handmaids. And something that was funny to me was when Lydia says gossip is a tool of the devil, and gossip is what got her place back to
I wrote that down too.
main aunt. Like,
Yeah.
interesting.
Lydia just meant gossip that I don't know about is the tool of the devil.
Yeah.
Now we are at the International Criminal Court. June's big day in court.
I actually love that she's wearing black, like a commander.
Yes, I like
I
that
like
too.
that too. I also like that they didn't have her swear on a Bible.
I love
like that it
Yeah.
showed the separation of church and state.
And I love that June asks if they come with the Bible, because she's totally against that part now.
Yeah, I'm curious
Well-
what she would have done. She might not have been like, I think she was just expecting it, like, because in America, that's what we
I
do.
think she just wants religion kept out of this.
Exactly.
Because
I
religion,
don't know. But, I mean,
I think it's because she expected it. That's what you expect
Yeah.
in a court, you know.
In America, in Canada, they don't use Bibles. In America, we do. So you would expect that if
Yeah.
you're going
Oh.
to swear.
for
And
America, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
I think it refers to the fact that she always had the Bible put in her face before the ceremonies and stuff. That's what I thought about when she asked for that, because I wouldn't want to see a Bible in that position, in that
Yeah,
moment.
that's true. But June has like maintained her own personal
Yeah,
beliefs.
Yeah,
So
her
I
own
wondered if
personal.
she was like, I don't know what she was thinking there. Like, I feel like it might have been a little more complicated than that. I don't know.
I would have asked for a Bible because I watch court on television all the time in America and they give you a Bible. So yeah, June's sitting in her black suit by herself on this long courtroom bench when the judge comes in and tells her it's time. And she's approaching the courtroom. We hear her heels clicking and the doors open. And this is like the brightest scene of her time in Canada. The courtroom is like blindingly bright after the previous scenes. And we see Serena has joined Fred. And then as June approaches the podium, she's asked if there's a Bible to swear on. And the man says, "No, ma'am. Not in this court." And he just asked her to tell her the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And after she does, the doors open again, and we see Mark Tuello lead Luke into the room against her wishes. She does not look happy about that, but it's time for her to take the stand. And she begins with, "My name is June Osborne. Fred Waterford and Serena Joy Waterford imprisoned me, beat me, and raped me. I came to the Waterford's house in 2017. It was my second posting. I can obviously do her testimony no justice," but she goes on for several minutes. Does anyone know how long?
It's 7 minutes, almost exactly.
Yeah.
And she concludes as she looks directly at us through the camera with, "I am grateful to be speaking with you today, but mine is just one voice. Countless others will remain unheard, imprisoned by men like Fred Waterford. Women," and she pauses, her voice is shaking, she's crying, "my friends who lost their lives and could never be heard. It is for those women that I ask the International Criminal Court to confirm the charges against this man and put him on trial. I ask for the maximum possible sentence. I ask for justice." And only then do you really hear music coming in. Luke is looking tearful. Fred is looking delusional as usual, as if she's hurt him and she couldn't possibly really feel like that. And Serena is looking thoughtful. And then she looks at Fred. And now the defense gets to ask questions.
That whole part where she's like, she kind of looks down and looks up and is like looking directly at the camera when she says the last part. I was just like,
she talks about her friends. I know.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, it literally feels like a public service announcement, the way that they shot that part, the ending. Like, that's how it hit me.
Well, and it hit me as if we're not just talking about Gilead here, you know?
Right.
We're talking about the real
She's
world.
talking to us.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Every horrible thing that's happening right now in the world, Afghanistan, everything, you know? It struck me like that too. And it's so cool that she's the one that wanted to do that the way that it was filmed.
Mm-hmm.
I read that Kira Snyder had written it not as a one shot, not intended as such, but it was Lizzie's choice that she wanted to try it that way. And it came out obviously amazingly effective.
It took 2 days to film, and the monologue, she decided to do it on the second day so she could have extra time to memorize. And what Lizzie says is the reason why we did it in one take was I didn't want to give the audience a chance to look away, in the same way that June is forcing that courtroom, the ICC, Fred and Serena, to face everything they have done to her and her friends and family over the last few years. I wanted the audience to not be able to look away and have to hear the whole thing. So it was a difficult thing to shoot.
It was perfect.
Yeah,
It's really incredible.
She's amazing.
There's so many long stretches where she doesn't even look down. And you're just like, she's memorized all of this like perfectly.
Yeah.
Like overnight.
Yeah.
And you can see her feelings in her face, like the different, you know, when she talks about certain things, you can see how it affects her and how she's trying to keep it, you know, as controlled as possible.
I really like how the light is so bright and natural. And it's like the way it's shining down through this glass in the ceiling, it almost like looks heavenly, like she's an angel.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. Why do you think June didn't mention the rapes at the Jezebels?
Oh, Right.
She mentioned them. She said amongst many others or something. But yeah,
I
why she
guess,
didn't
yeah.
actually.
I think she just didn't want to go into detail.
Okay.
But they were, I do think that they were notable and that she had to try to pretend to enjoy it, you know? And I think that that's a notable thing that they should have discussed.
I really love how she is trying to stay very controlled, but you could still see her emotion. Like when she gets to Nick's name, she pauses. You could tell she's being very careful about how she's speaking about him because she knows he can get in trouble. Because she says that Serena orders her to have sex with the driver and that Gilead Law left her no choice to say no, which is also, I think, implying that he didn't have a choice either. And then she calls him Mr. Blaine, which I kind of feel like is her trying to downplay any connection they have because obviously some people know that they were in a relationship. Because then she also mentioned that Serena was watching them. She's trying to show that it's Serena, not him.
I think part of that though is because this is just the confirmation for Fred's charges. Right.
Yeah.
So she's not going to go into detail about Serena's charges right now. That's not the point of this. Fred didn't have anything to do with the situation between Nick and June having sex. He wasn't involved in that. So she's not going to like be more specific about like he was raped and talk more about him because that's not relevant to Fred.
I'm basically trying to say she knows that Gilead is going to hear this. So
Yeah.
I think she's just trying to be careful in general, not for the court, but for Nick's safety in Gilead to like phrase it as carefully as she can.
Mhm.
Because then later on when she's talking about Lawrence, I think she's also kind of trying to protect him. I mean, it's the truth, but I think she's also kind of trying to protect him. And then she makes a point to say against their will and then uses Eleanor's name.
Yeah, sure. But for Lawrence, she basically admits here that he did never put her through the ceremonies. Thank you. So she basically admits to that. And I mean, it still wasn't clear if...
It seems quite dangerous. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that helps against Fred though.
Yeah,
because
it does,
obviously specifying that like Lawrence didn't do this willingly at all, even before Fred forced them. Like it's really makes that a much more vile situation that Fred orchestrated that. So I think it's leaving that in is more to hurt Fred, I think.
Right, but it's not protecting Lawrence, I think, like maybe we would expect her to. From Gilead.
Although it would protect him maybe if he defected or something. Like it would give him more like they might give him more leniency if they see that he was like if they have testimonies that he was kind and that he treated her better.
That's why I think she's looking at all these angles when she's writing this testimony because yes, like that implicates Lawrence in Gilead, but it's also showing like Tuello and the Americans that these two men were not bad.
Yeah.
Because like Lawrence, I'm sure they know Lawrence is very high up in Gilead. You have this super high up commander not participating. And then here Fred is like going to his house and forcing this to happen. So like you said, it makes Fred look a lot worse.
Yeah. I wonder though why she didn't mention that Eleanor died because of that, basically, because it put her off the cliff.
That surprised me too.
Maybe that's not like, what do they call that when it's not, there's no way to specifically tie
it's circumstantial.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, guys. So maybe that would like muddy things because she doesn't want to say something it's not just a direct.
Nah, this is an emotional plea. I feel like it would fit.
Yeah, I mean,
but she wants to be credible, right? Like she wants everything that she's saying to come across like.
Fair. Don't be too dramatic.
Right,
okay.
Right.
Fair.
She's giving facts.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And I think she didn't mention the Jezebels because they could say that she wanted to go to Jezebels, or imply that June and Fred had something. So I think
he could say, "You asked me to take you back."
That's true. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then also that I think it's very symbolic that Fred's lawyer was a woman because I think they wanted to show that there are women who are Gilead sympathizers too.
Oh,
yes,
bitches.
Yep. Yeah. I literally start the next part with, it's of course extra infuriating that his lawyer is a woman. And she starts out immediately with a character attack regarding her pre-Gilead adultery. I object strongly, though, to her lack of a sufficient response. June's. To the next question, when the lawyer says, well, you chose to be a handmaid, you could have chosen the colonies, right? Which is a death sentence. But instead of saying that or discussing the point that being given 2 choices of slavery does not constitute an actual choice, instead of that, she focused on the rape at 9 months, which to me kind of validated their ridiculous argument that the rest of it wasn't sexual slavery if she chose handmaid. But I like how the show shows realistic reactions to things. She probably wouldn't have responded to that attack perfectly. And back to the 9-month rape, Fred sells it as another ceremony sanctioned to help bring the baby into the world. He probably did put that in the books afterwards. That fucker. Then he focuses on Serena's pregnancy and how the sacrifices are necessary for the world. And June asks how her suffering was rewarded. And Fred responds with both of her daughters. You left out the part where I let you see Hannah once. But June is done. She is done. Anything else can wait for his trial, she says, and she walks out. My last note on that, though, was can she do that? Can you just walk out on defense?
I think so, because it's not an actual trial, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think she can just be done because they were gonna let her just send in her written testimony. So I guess they don't.
True.
So it's like, yeah.
I was so scared when this scene happened because, first of all, I agree the lawyer's a fucking bitch. And obviously this is a strategy. It's a typical court strategy, what she's doing, but it's still annoying that she can't fucking empathize, but that's her job. That's what she's supposed to do. And then on top of that, we get Fred's super monologue using God to justify the piece of shit that he is. So the way that they film June, like sideways, you can also see like a little bit of her ear tag, but you can see that she's furious. You can see that rage building. And I'm like, she's going to jump over and fucking kill him there. And she's going to look hysterical. She's going to look unstable. She's going to be the violent one, which is what always happens. And these people are going to look like people of God. And it's just going to be so bad. So when she stood up to him with such control, and then she said, I am done. That's my favorite, scene of the whole episode, because it's like, no, I'm not. No, you're done. Like, you don't get to tell me things like this anymore. You don't get to control me anymore. I'll see you in court. And it was so powerful to see it. And yeah, it's just an amazing scene.
That's really true. I also just couldn't believe that like the judges and people were like, stop, trying to stop Fred. And then all of a sudden he just goes into a monologue and they just like let him spin out. Like, so they just stopped trying.
That is not supposed to happen.
Yeah. It seems very fucked up that they would let him talk to her like that.
Yeah, they basically gave him a platform to preach his message, which is what he wanted.
And to continue like harassing June too.
And I thought it was interesting. Because he called Nicole your daughter. And I'm like, okay, here's the moment we're all talking about like, oh, why does Serena forget about Nicole now that she's pregnant? And I feel like this is the moment where he basically is like, she's your daughter.
He also needs to say that in court, right? Like he needs to make sure that it sounds like if he says my daughter, then they're questioning.
Yeah, I get it. I was not laughing, but the sentence with bringing the baby healthy into this world with a rape.
To bring God's gift into the world safely for the health of the child.
Yeah. For the health of the child, after the doctor said specifically they shouldn't do anything because it's too dangerous. And then he's like saying, yeah, it was to get her out safely. I'm like, it's crazy. When Fred is going on about that they have been rewarded for their suffering and that stuff, he touches Serena's belly and she's flinching back because they are not touching anymore. They are hostile to each other.
Then we're at Lawrence's house and Lydia seems to be in trouble. And it's funny to me that Lawrence is in charge of punishing her, I guess. But Lydia comes in like defending herself. Aunt Ruth got in my way. She's so often clumsy, and Lawrence cuts her off. Not like I care about her, but what about the handmaid? She was obedient, compliant. They all are these days. They've known Gilead most of their lives, unlike some. And he says it must be killing her that June won free in Canada. And I'm so glad that he can rub it in since June can't, and that he is rubbing it in since June can't. And he continues, free as a bird and singing like one too. So he has heard about the testimony. Like I've always wondered exactly, but of course they've heard it. He doesn't seem upset though, so he's okay. Lydia says she'll answer to God, and Lawrence's next response delights me too, which I should not be surprised by at this point. We'll see. Maybe she'll just wrap that old goat around her finger too. But But he continues, June won because she knows how to make people like her. People don't like you. And he says, people don't like me either. But he says, these reports have to stop. And when Lydia asks if he's going to terminate her, and he says no, he wants to reform Gilead with her. She has to get her shit together, though. So that's new, this reforming Gilead thing. And then he drops a sad bomb for us, exciting bomb for Lydia. Janine has been captured in Chicago, and Lydia's delighted. The trouble that she's caused, he says, the defiance. It's such a poor reflection on your training on Gilead. And Lydia defends her. I assure you this girl was led astray. He says, she was your responsibility, right? And Lydia's like so tearfully happy. He says, yes, it is. And he says, I know you enjoy inflicting pain. I'm not judging. Everybody needs a hobby, I guess. And Lydia is like very affected. She's crying. That's not true. I object to this. But Lawrence continues, it is counterintuitive for you to be inflicting this pain to your students at the Red Center. So do with her what you will. But like Ann Dowd's acting in the scene is incredible. The emotions, the crying, everything about it. I love it. It's so fucking like Aunt Lydia is just like such a puzzle, but she's amazing. I can't imagine anyone else playing her.
No.
She was really upset when Lauren said, you like inflicting pain. Like she was offended.
Yeah.
Like, I object to that. Like, that's not who I am. I'm like, what? It's really weird because I know she's happy to see Janine. Like, she's okay, like she's here. Like the way she hugs the file at the end, It was just like, okay, what's going on here?
Relieved.
Thank you.
She thought she's dead, right? Because they found her almost starved because she was like hiding out there for days, basically, because ever since June came back to Canada, right? And Aunt Lydia surely thought that she was dead too, like the others. And she's so relieved because she's like her baby, that she wants to form into this perfect, obedient handmaid. It's such a crazy relationship between those two. It's like...
But she's the only one, Janine's the only one that's ever showed Aunt Lydia any genuine affection in Gilead.
Yeah.
As crazy as it is that Janine feels that for her, she has in the past.
Yeah. I think because Janine kind of like all of the handmaids are pretty much infantilized, right? Like that's kind of like the point. And Janine like sort of regressed mentally because of what happened to her. And so I think that she's in like the perfect position for Aunt Lydia to like aunt her.
Yeah.
And so their relationship kind of hits all the buttons that like Aunt Lydia needs, right?
Did anybody find it funny that Lawrence was saying that the future of Gilead means the world to him, means everything to him? And
That's the part that I was like, shocking news. Yeah.
Do you really care about Gilead? I mean,
I think it was just manipulating Lydia. Like that's the only way to like feed her what she wants to hear and kind of manipulate her.
Yeah, that's a good point. Manipulates her so she's his ally to give him all the intel on the other commanders when he needs them.
He doesn't like the way Gilead is.
No.
He doesn't want it to change. So
the thing is, I always thought that after Eleanor died, that he wanted it to burn as a revenge, that Gilead is just burning to the ground because he hates everybody and everything. But he did want a perfect utopia and hoped that would be Gilead, but it didn't turn out the way he wanted it. So maybe he is trying to change it the way he wanted it, but why would he do that without his wife?
He said that Eleanor would have wanted him to clean up his messes. So.
Oh, right. I forgot about the sentence. Yeah.
I do like the parallel though of him saying that, he's trying to compliment June and says she knows how to make people like her, because he made that seem like that was a weakness back in the beginning of season 3. But now clearly he's learned like that actually is a positive thing. So I like that call out.
Then the support group is meeting, talking about how it was just like Waterford today, putting lipstick on a pig, and June walks in. They applaud her. They call her the woman of the hour before they realize she has someone with her. The aunt that was harassing Emily last meeting. Not enough excitement for her today at the testimony, it seems. Moira tells her she had no business bringing her here, and the others ask who she is. She tells them she's an aunt. Aunt Irene. Moira says this isn't the time or the place, and Moira asks who wants her to stay, and the women slowly each start putting their hands up. But June looks at Emily, who does not have her hand up yet, and says, I'm trying to help you, but it's up to you. And she pulls a chair in the middle of the circle for the aunt. Red Center Shame Circle 101. The triangle forming around her, though, reminds me so much of the hangings in the episode when Frances is hung. And they're doing the same thing here pretty much, pulling the ropes to hang her with. I thought that was cool, and I would not have noticed it previously to our rewatch. The aunt starts admitting she's done some terrible things, but she missteps greatly when she calls them corrections. And even when June pushes back and calls them torture, she just offers punishments meant to keep you alive. But the aunt continues that what she did to Emily was worse, and June asks what she did. And Iris/Irene admits that she was the one that told the eyes about Emily's relationship with her Martha. And June didn't seem to see that coming. I don't know. I didn't think, but she gets right to explaining it to everybody else there. So you were the reason why they hung that poor woman, and you were the reason why they mutilated Emily. And Emily asks her what she wants, and she says that since she found out Emily was here, she hasn't had a moment's peace. She wants Emily to forgive her. June says, you crossed the border and pretended just to be any other refugee, and you lied, and you gave yourself a new name, and you thought you could just leave all the other shit you did behind. Why the fuck do you think you deserve forgiveness? And she says, we're all God's children. And June says, bullshit, you people hide behind God whenever it serves you. And she gets on her knees and begs Emily to tell her what to do to make things better. And Emily tells her there's nothing she can do, and then she just rises and walks out. It pisses me off that that woman was like apparently totally fine until she heard that Emily had joined her in Canada.
Yes, exactly. It was like out of sight, out of mind, because, you know, she didn't know that Emily was in close proximity. So it just makes her apology even more callous in a way. And also she says, I need you to forgive. Like, she needs to feel better about herself, about everything that she did in order to.
I can't sleep since.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, it's just, it's a worse apology, you know, like you're trying to apologize, but you're not even considering it's just exactly, it's not what you need. You need this in order to move forward, because you can't forgive yourself over what you did. And it's just like, it's crazy how they show that, you know, because on the outside, people are just going to be like, well, she's just asking for forgiveness. But it's just the way that she asks for forgiveness that you see that it's something that she needs. She's not repentful.
But she doesn't even ask. She's telling her. Like, she's not even saying, will you forgive me? She's saying, I need you. So
that bothered me too, the statement versus the question.
I mean, it's literally the same way that Serena asked June for in the last episode, in episode 7, that Serena was like, you know, on her knees begging June to forgive her. She didn't really feel bad about it. She just wanted June to forgive her so that she could move, so that Serena could move on. It wasn't about June getting anything out of that apology.
I love too, though, how Emily was like, you people hide behind God every time it serves you. Like, it's such, that is the epitome of Gilead. That's exactly what they do on a daily basis. And this woman is basically just proving that, like, I want forgiveness, but basically she's hiding behind God, but she doesn't really care, you know?
Now we enter the most uncomfortable scene I've ever watched. It opens with awkward silence, except for the sounds that are clearly intended to make you feel uncomfortable, like fork scraping and chewing. Chewing is like a personal thing for me that I really can't stand, so maybe not for everybody, but there's no way that they didn't intend for these sounds to be very like bothersome to you. And there's no music. Mm-hmm. And Luke asks her how group was, and she says it was fun, and then she tries to give him a little more. She's, you know, telling him the food is really good. And then he tells her that he's really sorry about today, about coming to court. So he does know what he did wrong. I wasn't 100% on that before, because we've discussed earlier the way that she'd phrased, you know, but he does know what he did wrong. And then he blows his apology in my eyes by saying, at least now I know everything, and maybe we can just move on. It's pretty much all of that sentence. It's terrible. I do feel for him though. He has no idea what to do. First of all, saying we can just move on has a lot of problems in it itself, because she's the one that has borne the brunt of this, you know, torture, obviously. So just saying we can move on doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But the worst part is, now I know everything, because she had a testimony for 7 minutes over 7 years of torture. So obviously he knows like 1% of what happened, if that. So it really irks me that he says, now I know everything. He tells her if she wants to talk about anything about Hannah, and she says, I don't. And then he starts crying, and she feels the need to comfort him despite all she's been through, even just today. And it's just really sad for her. But then she launches into one way that she knows how to transact when she's not like present in the moment, or doesn't want to be, I guess. And she starts to awkwardly, aggressively like kiss him and reach for his pants. And this time he pushes her off him, and he yells at her to talk to him. And then she just death glares him and storms off. And it's still really sad for Luke, but he's just going about it so wrong that it's so hard to focus on feeling sorry for Luke, which is how he's feeling, versus June, who's going through so much shit right now and still having to deal with like his emotions. It's just tough to watch. Very awkward scene. Well done. Great acting by OT and Lizzie.
Yeah, I wanted to point out the moment that she's like, he says, I don't know what to do, and she's slowly freaking out, and she's trying to push down what she's feeling, and then you see her closing her eyes and shaking her head and slipping into a mask, basically trying to be able to comfort him. And the way she looks when she gets up and goes to him, it's like I felt she was thinking, not again. Like, is this happening again? What the fuck? And then she has the smile up, and then she looks friendly and everything. So she's really just forcing it in. And only when they start to, she starts to kiss him, and we can see how her eyes are open, and it looks so uncomfortable. It's just to shut him up. It's not no love or anything there. It's just, yeah.
I think Luke cried because he finally heard a little bit about what June's been through, and he feels more guilty than before, a lot more. And I have to say that even when I always try to understand Luke, I hate the part when June has to comfort him, because I think it should be the other way around. But also, I think he was trying to communicate with June.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to communicate. She avoids all the talk with Luke because she didn't want to talk about anything. And Luke is like forcing her to talk. She wants to avoid that. And that's why she's so uncomfortable,
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's already talked about it all day. She's been talking about, more than anybody would want to that day.
I have trouble seeing anybody move on without Hannah as well. So him saying, yeah, let's just move on is a little bit like, huh? Your daughter is still there.
Well, and there is no moving on either. Like, right?
No way. Yeah.
Even with Hannah, everybody, it's like we're starting a new life. We're not like moving on past it. Like, it's always going to be there. So yeah, their relationship needs to change to fit who June is now, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I think my issue with the whole scene is just, like you guys have said, the dismissiveness of, so now we can move on. But I think that's just that's just something that's so commonly said, like, let's move on, like you have to move on. So I'm sure he doesn't even understand, like we've been talking about, how dismissive it is, especially in this exact moment. And I just don't think June feels safe enough or being able to have any sort of intimacy with Luke right now, because obviously she's just free. And obviously he's not going the right way. So it's just a circle of not being able to communicate, not being able to maybe be a team. And he's just pushing her away while he's just trying to hold on to her. And there's that connection is just no longer there. And it's sad, because I know most of us have said, like, it sucks that she has to comfort him because of everything that we've seen that she's gone through. But then I'm like, what about him? Like, you can see the desperation.
That's where he needs an outlet for that. I guess that's what frustrates me. Like, he's entitled to feel all this, but he should be crying like that with Moira or just anybody in the world but June.
Yeah.
A husband support group.
A therapist.
I'm sure they exist.
Yeah.
All of the above. They're all good options for this moment in time when she needs a break. Then Lydia is reunited with her prize handmaid, Janine. Then she says Janine looks like the wreck of the Hesperus, which is a ballad poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And the message of that poem is about arrogance and foolish human pride and how it can lead to tragic and devastating consequences. It should be Gilead's motto. Lydia tells Janine that their boys in Chicago saved her, and Janine immediately asks where June is, if she's dead. And when Lydia tells her that her friend is in Canada, Janine is ecstatic. She's laughing and crying, saying she made it. I knew that she would make it. And it's so sweet. I love this. It was such a genuinely happy emotion for her. Not at all jealous. But Lydia turns it around and says, June left you. Don't tell me she couldn't take you with her. She's done it before. Maybe this time you were just too much trouble. Annoying because it comes on the heels of June telling Janine she should have left her a long time ago, which Lydia could never have known, but she would be delighted to know that she was hitting that at the right time. But Janine switches topics and says, I know what happens here. I know it will keep happening until I die. Just don't make me a handmaid again, please. And Lydia blames that on June too. Look what she's done to you. She corrupts you. She destroys everyone. And she reminds Janine she spent her whole life losing the people she loves because of you, you horrid bitch. That pissed me off so much. Like, that did nothing but hurt her. That was just kicking her while she was down. It did nothing to help her. And Janine begs her again, please don't make me a handmaid again. And Lydia looks like maybe she'd like to grant that, but she can't, and says there's no use in being theatrical. And she hugs her. Whatever are we going to do with you?
I think Lydia is being extremely mean with Janine. She's using her anger against June through Janine. Something weird, but
yeah, I agree.
Lydia doesn't want to hurt Janine, but she's pissed with June. So
yeah,
Janine is kind of like there's like a tug of war with Janine between June and Lydia, right?
Mhm.
Like Lydia's feeling like June like won her, and now Lydia's got to win her back.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
Exactly.
I'm sad.
It's horrifying that it looks like Janine believes her, that June just left her, as if she didn't. I mean, how should she find her? She even tried to. She didn't leave her. June wanted to find Janine, and Janine just believes her like that. And I'm like, I know that Janine is going back and forth with her mental stability, but it's like, I hope that she wouldn't give in that easily on that topic after everything.
Then Moira tells Emily it was shitty of June to ambush her like that, but Emily defends June. She thought it would help. Moira asks if it did, and Emily says it wasn't enough. And then Moira asks if she wants to see her again, and she starts kind of manipulating her. I don't know, at least angling for her to be more useful, and asks the aunt to be a witness for the ICC. Maybe Emily can talk to her again in private this time, get her to testify. Move forward, Emily says. So Moira's kind of using Emily too.
That's kind of like what I got from that scene too, that Moira was kind of, pushing her to like try and do something useful, like you said. But I think it's interesting that, we see how Moira's already past her guilt, move on. And Emily's kind of stuck. Like in this whole episode, you see, like you said, you don't know what she feels, but you know that she's angry. That anger is still there because it's like she's trying to fit into Canada, but that anger that June has out in the open is there. And it contrasts to how Emily was in Gilead before she got to Canada. She was very angry for obvious reasons, and June wasn't, and now June is. So it's interesting how they shuffle each other.
It's interesting too, on the heels of what Violet said about Lydia and June using Janine in kind of a tug of war. That's how Emily is at the moment between June and Moira. They're both like, no, use my way of healing, use my way of healing.
True.
Yeah, what Violet said reminded me of what June says to Lydia in 403. Janine, your girl, she turned on you in a second. So I'm pretty sure that also pulled in a tug of war.
Yeah.
But Emily still has that little piece of paper as she drives, so we can tell she is going to talk to her, the aunt, like Moira asked. And the music does not prepare me for what she's about to find, which is some paramedics running around, and then we see a foot hanging, a red slipper fallen off, and then we see it's attached to the aunt she was coming to see. And the sun is shining through her hand in a cool way. And there is another triangle above her in the tree. I just looked because I noticed it in that scene in the library. Emily takes it all in stride pretty well and turns the car around, drives by the fire truck, headed back home, and her face is still unreadable, to me anyway. So like this whole episode, I'm very unclear on how Emily's feeling about everything.
I think probably Emily is unclear about how Emily's feeling about everything too, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that she looked a bit satisfied in the end. When she drove away, but all the time I was expecting her to start to smile or something like that, but she didn't. So she really was truly keeping everything to herself, even though she was alone. She's probably used to keep it all in and don't let her anger and emotions show. But still, there was a slight change in her face, like more, I don't know if it was relief or anything like that.
Yeah, is when Emily's going to the house, what are her intentions?
It seems like it's to do what Moira just asked her to do,
Yeah.
which is talk to her.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's to murder her.
Right. Because I was wondering a little bit if the reason why Emily's expression is unreadable is partly because like what you're saying is true, Claudia. Like she probably does have some relief, but then at the same time, she might feel like she didn't get her revenge or she missed out on something. I don't know.
That's how it's presented at the end, though. The women are like, oh, you must be upset you didn't get your day in court, whatever. And she's happy. So
she's really happy. She doesn't seem like she's faking it or anything. Yeah.
Maybe it's just setting in still when she's driving away. Like she's
probably
processing everything.
I think it's all just good acting.
Yeah.
I like the parallel that the aunt hung herself and Emily's ex-girlfriend lover got hung.
You guys think that's why she did it that way? I think that's why.
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was interesting though how they made that whole scene though look very Gilead. The EMTs looked like guardians because they're all dressed in black. And then she's hanging herself and she's got red slippers and then the light, like it just felt very eerie.
Then we get the infuriating scene with Fred and Serena's fan base. But first, I think it's protesters against them. They haven't gone outside yet. And Serena asks if he believed what he said yesterday.
I think she's referring to his whole speech.
Everything about June.
His preaching about
how Gilead works.
About the pregnancy being a reward for their sufferings and all of that, I think.
But as they walk out in their full commander and wife attire, the crowd starts cheering, and they were expecting protesters, which I would find unbelievable 6 years ago, but now I believe it. And she reaches for his hand, and he looks beyond shocked, but he goes with it. And they walk out as a united front to cheers and posters of trust in God, free the Waterfords, cameras clicking, we love you, Serena. It's insane, of course.
I was wondering how, like, if they were expecting protesters, what changed? Why is there a fan base now? Like, was it because of what was said in the testimony? Because in the circle, in the therapy circle, they said, you know, the internet is having a field day. So it was just weird to me, like how everything just spread out of obviously what he said and how people bought it. And that's why they're there.
After Fred said that it worked, they managed to get through to the people. I thought that maybe the testimony was not streamed live, but put out there. And the people saw what he said afterwards to June. And that's why they are now showing up.
It seems like it was televised.
Yeah, crazy.
Then it's quiet back in the library, and Moira is there to comfort everyone about Irene, asks if anyone wants to say anything, and the other women are all telling Emily not to feel guilty, saying how traumatic it must have been, how she had nothing to do with it. And it's similar to the beginning of the episode when they're all speaking for June. And June speaks up and says, why don't we let Emily tell us how she feels if she wants to? And June's instincts are spot on because, and I didn't see this coming, Emily's looked kind of upset this whole time in the meeting. So then when she says, I feel amazing, I'm glad she's dead, and I hope I had something to do with it. So that I was shocked by that. And Moira is visually bothered by this. And then the other woman started talking about what they'd really like to do to their aunts, commanders' wives. Moira finally calls it off once Vicky fantasizes about a broomstick and the wife in her house. And Moira says, anger is an important emotion, but we can't live there. And tees up one of my favorite June lines in the show and in our intro. Why not? Why does healing have to be the only goal? Why can't we be as furious as we feel? Don't we have that right? And Moira shuts down the whole meeting on that note. I think that's the hour, ladies. But that's not going to stop June. I'll stick around longer if anyone wants, she says. And everybody does. Or at least you hear multiple people saying, I would. Somebody thanks her. And Moira looks super unhappy.
I think Emily, though, like finally, first of all, I love how she has like a halo around her head, almost like Jesus with the crown of thorns. That imagery was really cool. But I think because Emily finally said the ugly feelings that you're not supposed to say. So then everybody feels like, oh, thank God. Like now I can say my feelings, and you could all see them all getting more lively.
This is one of my favorite episodes precisely because how they play with anger and how it's portrayed in media. Like, is it something that's valid or is it something that you should push down? Like everybody always says, you should not be angry. And to see that other perspective where these people have a right to feel angry. And obviously Moira's right, you can't live there, but you have there's a way to navigate anger, and anger can be useful. And that's not something that's said. I don't think I've ever heard it. So for me as a viewer, this episode
because of that is really, really powerful. And it's validating in a way.
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, it probably was just because like I was constantly told not to be sad. So it's the opposite. I had the opposite issue as a kid. Like I was always told, don't be sad. Why are you crying? What's wrong with you? So whatever we're like berated about is probably what we feel like we wish we could express now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that here the episode comes to full circle because it starts with June basically being unhappy with the fact that nobody shows anger like she does, and now everybody is on her side except Moira. Basically, they should have expressed their anger before too, but they were too scared to do that. So I'm glad that she did push everybody.
Yeah. They all seemed happy to be able to express their innermost feelings finally. And then Hell is Around the Corner by Tricky plays, and it's pretty perfect. As June walks back into Luke's house, and she looks like she's on a mission. He's on the end of the bed being sad, and she approaches him and puts her head on his, holds his head and says, honestly, finally, Luke, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you about the last time I saw Hannah. But it's nice that she's finally opening up to him, and that's the end of the episode. Okay, I think that's a wrap on our spoiler-free analysis of this episode. Hang on a few seconds if you're a long-time watcher, and we will discuss the episode in the context of the show to date. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, who's got notes?
I had one about Emily. Just like in the beginning of season 1, like Emily kept trying to push June to become more involved with the resistance and Mayday. Once her and June started talking to each other, I think she kind of saw that in her, that there was that potential for her to be a good member of Mayday and get involved, and like saw that, badass person in her. And I feel like this is kind of like what's happening here, where June is looking at Emily and knows that she's got a lot of anger and feelings and that she's probably suppressing all that. And I think June was right to push her, because in the finale, Emily is the one who basically gives her, I don't know if I'd say the idea, but she kind of pushes June to take vengeance on Fred. And she's basically her right-hand person in the woods, killing him. So I think that journey is kind of cool between the two of them, like how they both see that spark in each other and push each other to go to the next level and feel their feelings and take revenge, because that's what they do.
Yeah. And I can extend that because basically what June did in this episode is she gathers her crew that helps her later to finish off Fred, because I think that those are all the women that help her later, right? I think I recognized one or two of them, the handmaids that she has with her in the woods. So I kind of like that she got her crew. And the only other note that I had was the fact that Luke was saying, maybe we can just move on. And it made me remember the moment in the car where he tells her to let it go and let Fred go. And it's basically the same. And yeah.
And it's like his mindset, I guess. Like that's how he wants to deal with it. And she just can't. I don't know. Rewatching this episode, like I feel like the big theme of this episode is expectations on feelings and how you should feel versus how you actually feel. And I was thinking too about, like, I know she's like short with Luke and everything, like when they're washing the dishes earlier in this episode, and she's kind of frustrated. But I was thinking about, like, I'm just imagining June sitting there writing this testimony. She obviously has to go through her entire journey of what she's been through with the Waterfords and everything that happened since season 1, basically. And I can't even fathom like how much that had to hurt to like think about all of that and then somehow summarize all of that into 7 minutes, knowing like you have to say this in front of lots of people. That's obviously like really hard to go through. I think having to recount all that and deal with all that, like it makes sense to me now why she just doesn't want to open up about Nick or even utter his name, because opening that can of worms as far as like her feelings for him and maybe never seeing him again is too much to deal with, along with everything else she's dealing with and the fact that she doesn't have Hannah either. So
yeah, and we see in episode 9 how that affects her when it does happen, when the can of worms is opened. And yeah.
Okay, so I think that's a wrap on our analysis of this episode. Come back on Thursday for our analysis of season 4, episode 9. We're getting so close to season 5. That's crazy. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Then June and Luke are washing dishes, and it seems like Luke's trying to sympathize it on. Is it aunt or aunt? Why do I never remember? They must say it one way.
It's regional.
Aunt.
Right, but in Gilead, what do they say? I feel like I
really?
should say it right, and
Both.
I have no
I
idea.
actually
They
say
say
both.
Do
they
they?
say both because I think it depends on what the person,
Who you
the
are.
individual. Yeah.
Ah, thank God. Okay, because I
Wait.
think I go back and forth.
You go back and forth and it's really cute.